episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Hi, I'm Austin.
I'm Tori.
And I'm Josh. We're going over Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. And I read this book last year. I thought it was brilliant. And now I thought that it would be a great idea to make this the graphic novel of choice for one of the graphic novels of choice for season 6. And I have the discussion starter for this one. And mine's much more simple compared to my predecessors. But I still think that it is a good way to begin. The question being, how do you feel Marjane sees gender throughout the text?
How does she see it, or how does she portray it? Like, does it matter?
How does she portray it, and how does her character how does her character feel that it matters?
Well, I feel what I gained from the narrator, I don't know if it's supposed to be directly her or some manifestation of her.
It is her life story. So.
I know it's her life story, but I didn't know if it was supposed to be like exactly like, is it what she wants to tell, or is it that she was like, I don't know how I'm not articulating myself correctly here.
The events that took place happened, but the way that the specific details, right. I think she picked and chose.
I think for her specifically, gender didn't matter, but the events surrounding her life, gender was extremely important in a political sense. And it kind of made me think of The Handmaid's Tale, in the fact that, at one point in time, the argument for the veil is that, like, hair generates waves that excite men or something like that, and that's a whole plot point in and of itself right there, and just the way that women are men are viewed in where she grew up was profound and was very, very intriguing.
And the same thing happens with girls wearing suggestive clothing to school, and the reason that they should not wear them is because it turns boys on.
Things like
when they don't teach boys
like
to.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, I think another thing that's very interesting is how Margie's kind of idea and conceptions of gender, I think, change throughout. Not only as she gets older, but also as things progress in the book. So looking, I know towards the beginning of the book, there's a lot of talk about Zarathustra and Zoroastrian religion and whatnot. But then as the book progresses, Islamic fundamentalists take over the Iranian government and start enforcing these different rules. Because in their, in this belief that they're now trying to push, it says that, women have to cover their hair, they have to be modest, and here's all these reasons why. And I think one's really interesting to look at how that was not part of Margie's life growing up in Iran normally, and with her experience, with her family's experience with Zoroastrianism, so I think that's very interesting. But I also think I'm really into, and one of the reasons I was first introduced to this book and kind of got interested in it was learning about Margie's kind of rebellion and her interest in punk rock music, because I'm a huge fan of like 80s hardcore, and then this book, starts in 79, I want to say, and so talking about these musicians and things that were happening around the world in the early 80s, I'm really into that scene, and I think it's so cool to see how she can express her own identity and what it means for her to be a woman through this punk rock scene that was, one, breaking down these traditional, in the West, right, punk rock was kind of breaking down these traditional ideas of what does it mean, specifically punk rock, like Riot Girl bands and women in punk rock, we're kind of breaking this idea of like, what does it mean to be feminine, what does it mean to be a woman? And so that's really cool, but not only is she doing that, she's also using this, music scene to kind of say, not only am I changing what it means for me to be a woman, I'm also changing what it means for me to be Iranian, and to live here, and I'm kind of rejecting this government that I don't think speaks for me. So
didn't she get in trouble for one of the records? I want to say, I don't was Michael Jackson.
She had a pin on that was Michael Jackson, and she got stopped at one point because she had jeans on and sneakers on, and a group of women who, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on their titles, and I feel really, really bad.
I know.
But like the mothers of the guardians of the something to the effect of, it was 3 women who were in charge of like neighborhood watch. And they were going to take her and bring her in, and she kind of cried her way out of it. But they tried to stop her because she was wearing stuff that like literally I'm wearing right now. I have sneakers on and jeans, and like my nails are painted, and all 3 of those things were like they were illegal. And those things she did anyway. Like we take for granted here as a sign of like it's individuality. And that's exactly the reason why it was so taboo and it was so illegal. It was that individuality, that sense of self that was trying to be quelled. So.
And everything historical in this piece is true.
Yes.
And I think
factual.
The introduction was just brilliant. The way that she presents Iran, I think that in itself gave me a greater understanding. That they're always a country at war because they have so many resources that there's so much to fight over.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have the different contrasting ideas on top of that. But with regard to her and gender, at the very beginning she talks about how she wants to be a prophet.
Yes.
That was fantastic,
And the fact that she didn't think that just because she was a girl doesn't mean that she
she even has a panel where all of the prophets lined up are like, a girl, and she's like, I'm the last chosen one, basically, and like it kind of puffs up her chest a little and finds that intimate connection with God, kind of like a true calling, which I thought was absolutely, really very well done.
And she makes it funny too, in that young kind of way.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I was just going to say quickly, I love the artwork within it. Kind of almost has that Charles Schultz, innocent, childlike, thick lines and strong use of like black and white and contrast and stuff like that. And especially in the beginning, the characters are round and thick lined and not a lot is shown, but the more you get into it, the more that she uses that art to render, there's people get trapped in a cinema and they're burned alive in there, and there's like speculation on why and how that happened, and the way she illustrates that kind of stuff where it's still that very childish, thick hand-drawn lines, but still holds that gravity of the situation, I think was another really fantastic feather in the cap there.
That was something that I was going to bring up. I'm a big fan of graphic novels for a lot of different reasons, but one of the things that I think is great, and specifically with this book, is not only is Margie, I don't know if she still goes by Margie, as a child, everyone called her Margie as a nickname, and now her official name is Marjane, but whatever. Margie's not only telling her story, but also I think it's really important for a Western audience who might not understand the history of Iran and other nations in the Middle East. I think it's really great that she was able to write this book that's very personal, that also in some ways tells the history that is necessary to understand her story, but she does it in a super accessible way.
Yeah, it's absolutely accessible.
It's a graphic novel, It's not like you have to read this million-page novel and it's written to a level that not everybody can read and understand it. It's a graphic novel, and I think that not only that, but also, as you said, kind of, it's very like Charles Schultz style. It's very.
That's what made me think of it, at any rate.
Yeah, I feel like it's a very bare bones style. It's not, super intense. I mean, it's beautiful, and she's obviously very talented. But I think she purposely made these decisions, and one of the reasons I think that's really great about it is it draws people in. And I think that graphic novels have an amazing way of talking about really huge issues in a way that everybody can read it and like be like, oh, I get this. This makes sense to me. It's accessible.
I definitely think that graphic novels get a bad rap because they're picture books, but they're not like, and especially this really kind of is the great argument. I want to say 2 years ago, I went to New York Comic Con, and New York Comic Con, I believe, happens at the same time as New York Teachers Convention, and they had this really awesome panel on STEAM, where arts are incorporated in science and math, and incorporating graphic novels into that education. So it was done by this librarian who stocks her local schools, like just regular like public high schools, with graphic novels of every kind you can imagine, like biology, anatomy. There was one talking about like personal discovery, history, and this is another really great example of a life story and history of a nation. It has war in there, it has life in there, it has tiny little snapshots, but it also has that grand scheme, overarching image of what happened to that nation. So, graphic novels should very definitely, graphic novels, comic books, however you want to call it, which I think they're two actually separate entities now, but it's unfortunate, because if somebody picked this up and looked at it and be like, oh my god, it's so like childish the way that it's drawn, but as soon as you start flipping through like page 5, you're hooked. So it's definitely something that I would say, get your hands on it when you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the first graphic novel I've really read that got me really interested was Fun Home, which I know was something huge.
Oh, that's such a good one.
Last year and the year before that, because it became a Broadway musical.
It's another good example of life story told through imagery, because you marry seeing and doing, and it's kind of that taking by the hand and saying, okay, I'm going to lead you through my story in a way that I want.
Yeah.
In a more personal manner.
And there's
Moss is another one.
One more time?
Moss.
Yes.
Fableman.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Which only that used anthropomorphic images, which I think
That's another good one, yeah.
Yeah. One of the a drag and performance artist who I really like, by the name of Sasha Velour, is also a graphic artist, and her MFA thesis was actually a graphic novel talking about queer issues and political issues in Russia. She lived there for a while, and something that I kind of learned from meeting her was she would have these conversations with people there. She had a bachelor's in philosophy and she's a Fulbright scholar. She would go to have these conversations with people, and she would kind of realize after talking to them that she's like, I'm talking at this level, and you have no idea what I'm saying. But what you have to say is also incredibly brilliant. It's just we're not maybe speaking the same, even though they were both speaking Russian.
I'm here and you're here, but we're both going in the same direction.
Yeah. And then so she found, even though she wasn't really a graphic artist to begin with, she found cartooning to be a way to kind of talk about really large issues in a very accessible way. So I think that's really cool. And now I look at, I've always really respected graphic novels, but now I look at them in a totally different way, because they're able to bring these conversations that are really important to have to a wider variety of people, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Was there any final thoughts, I suppose? Anything anybody wanted to bring up?
So really great book. Check it out. There's a few different versions of it. This version.
I have the same exact version.
Yes.
Same exact.
It's
And the
printed
sequel
in.
looks like this.
Yeah. So there's one version where it's printed as Persepolis, and then Persepolis 2, which tells Marjie's story where Persepolis ended. They also, I know, came out with a version that is both books together.
The complete Persepolis. Yeah.
Yes. So whether you read the complete Persepolis, whether you just read one, I definitely recommend it. There's also a film version of it. So I definitely recommend that you can check that out too. If you're like, I'm not super into graphic novels, but I like films, check it out. It's a really amazing story, not just from a personal standpoint of being able to hear Marjie's story, and I think it's really important to be able to hear people's stories, but also the history that you learn, that I feel like is something that I would have never had learned on my own, about Iran and Iran's role in the Middle East in the 80s, basically. And
Perspective has a lot to do with it.
Goodness,
I think that I learned so much about perspective, especially the impression that we get on Iran this day and age. And also the Iranian hostage crisis from their point of view during the Carter administration.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, I feel like the only thing I remember from school about Iran and this time is the hostage situation.
Yeah.
And I learned about that in, all of 3 paragraphs in the textbook once. So.
It gives you pause, and it gives you the chance to sit back and really weigh like your life and say like, wow, okay, I understand what I have now, and it gives you another chance to be able to walk even through a couple of pages through somebody else's life, which is really, really important, always important.
Okay. How would we rate this on the scale of 0 to 5 stars, half stars permitted? Austin.
I don't believe in rating systems, mostly because I'm terrible at them. But I have 4 stars, probably because it's a great book, but I don't think anything's perfect. So it's great. Check it out. 4.
Okay.
I'm an all or nothing type of person, 5 stars. So either you read it or you shouldn't. You should definitely read this.
I'm rating it perfect 5 stars. It was on my list of 10 best books that I read in 2016. I think that this does a great job from the historical perspective. It does a great job telling a meaningful story, and it has that lighthearted sense of humor that allows for the experience to flow. And I finished reading Persepolis in a day.
It's a quick read. Not to make light of it, it's engaging, so it's a quick read because you're just sitting there kind of like flipping the pages.
I read Mouse I read the 2 in a day or 2 itself, but I got these 2 separately. I had Persepolis. I think it wasn't until December that I got Persepolis 2, so that's when I got to that, and I rated them together as well. But be sure to join us next time for another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading.